Hey, welcome back to the garden, everybody. Today, I'm going to focus this video on some mistakes that I've made with the design of my garden and some things I'm going to start doing a little bit differently, and I may even transplant a few plants to try to fix some of these mistakes. So just quickly go over this with you today in this video. Um, the basis for these mistakes is moisture. In other words, you want to get plants that need a lot of moisture in areas where they're going to get that, and you need to put plants that really prefer dry conditions in the drier areas. So for my garden here, the wettest area is right in here, in this section right here. So pretty much everything that's within this view, going across the south side, the back side of my house. This is the wettest area for two reasons: because of all the water that comes off the roof. I don't have gutters, so I get a good even amount of water all across here coming off the roof. It's also just closer to my back door, so it's a little easier for me to get the water hose and put some water on some things. This spot right here is by far the wettest because I've got that roof line coming together right up there, and it really pours a ton of water right down into this corner here. And so, that's why I put the bananas over here. They need a lot of moisture. But let's focus on a few cases of, I got it mostly right. I got most of the plants in the right spot in terms of water and sun and everything else. But I did make a mistake on a couple of things. And one is these moringa trees. I have to be honest, I guess I haven't had as much experience with moringa as I have with the more temperate and native plants. And I made an assumption about moringa that turned out to be totally incorrect. I assumed that because moringa is a tropical plant, that it probably needs a lot of water, just like these bananas, cassavas, all these tropical spinaches. All these plants need a pretty good bit of water. Even these canna lilies, they need a pretty good bit of water, all these tropical plants, but not moringa. Moringa actually prefers dry. Cannot stand cold weather at all. Will freeze completely back to the ground with a frost. And not only that, as soon as the temperature gets below 60 degrees, it's just not happy. It'll quit growing and it'll start dropping leaves. It won't like it. And then when it gets down to a frost, forget it. It's going to die all the way to the ground. And what got me to thinking about this is, it's all in the news now. I'm sure you've heard about this super El Nino, supposedly even more intense than the one in the 1870s that actually led to the death of about 3.5% of the human population on Earth due to famine. That was mostly in India and China, combined with the policies of the British Empire that controlled those areas, exporting their food even during the awful famine and drought. But anyway, I digress. So this El Nino is supposed to be even more intense than that one. And one of the things that happens in El Nino is here where we're at in Florida and across the southern United States, all along the Gulf Coast and southern half of the United States, we get a wetter and more overcast gray skies winter time. The other thing it does, by the way, it suppresses hurricanes, so that's a good thing. And so far we seem to see that. We've got very, very little tropical activity this year, and it seems to be holding up. We might still get a hurricane or two, but this El Nino is known to suppress hurricanes if it's in place during the fall, during hurricane season. But then the other thing it does is it brings in a lot of rain, a lot of gray overcast skies. So the temperatures, you may not have more mornings below freezing, but you're going to have cooler weather overall. You're not going to have as warm a high temperature during the daytime. So in other words, you're going to have gray, cloudy skies and more rainfall than normal. In other words, you're going to have wet, soggy soil a lot more often than a typical year. And if that happens, my moringas here might not make it. Their roots may rot in the ground and it may kill them. So it's not so much the freezing weather that will kill them, because moringa is very, very good at keeping the roots alive when it freezes. But it needs dry soil for that to happen. If the soil is real wet and soggy, those roots will rot and that'll kill them. So that was my first mistake I made here that I want to discuss. I should have planted my moringa trees back here towards the drier area. So we're going through a transition zone right here. This is drier, starting to get drier. And then the further we go back, basically the drier it is, just because it's wide open to the sky, so it's hotter, sunnier. That keeps it drier. And it's just further back here to where I don't get back here enough with the hose and water enough. But right back in here where I have my other desert type plants, like my jujubes, my figs, my pomegranates, this is where I should have planted my moringa. And then I've got some plants back here. You know, I won't call it a mistake because I really don't have a better spot to plant these Dunstan chestnuts. I have them back here in my desert area, and truthfully, they could use a little bit more water than some of these other desert type plants I've got back here. This one you can see is suffering a little bit from lack of water. It's kind of dry. The other one's doing a little better. But I didn't have these trees get pretty big. So I didn't really have a good spot close to the house, because that's where I've got my Asian persimmons, some of the trees that I value more, peaches and plums and so forth. So I won't call that a mistake, but just to know, Dunstan chestnuts can benefit from a little more moisture in the ground. So I should have put the moringas back here. Now, as far as plants that I planted in areas that were too dry, I wish I would have planted them closer to the house. Right at the top of the list is going to be these blackberries. So in my previous video, I kind of showed where I had a really nice lush blackberry right up there, right over there by the back of the house. It's just really lush and beautiful, producing a lot of berries. These aren't doing as good. Now this one's showing some signs of growth, but overall it's underperforming, and this one is really underperforming. It's just not growing that well. Even this little plum tree here, I should have planted it a little closer to the house where it gets a little wetter. But these blackberries, and then I've got some more thornless blackberries over here, and it's the same thing with these guys. I've got a lot of weeds in here, but these blackberries don't look anywhere near as lush as the ones I planted closer to the house. So I think I may, this winter, after everything gets dormant, after the frost comes, I believe I'm going to transplant these blackberries up to a wetter, moister area right by the back of my house. Probably all 6 of these plants. Now I've got to make a decision about this Mysore raspberry group right here. Now this is a tropical raspberry, and they do need a lot of water, like most of your tropicals. I mean, they're alive. They did produce some berries. They grew some, but these things will just go through the roof with explosive growth in the right conditions. And it's a little too dry here where they're at, so they're not growing that well. They've got some really nasty thorns on them. These are really bad, really, really sharp, big, nasty thorns. So I'm not sure I want them real close to the back of my house for that reason. So I don't know, all things, considered, I probably leave them right here, but just try to make more of an effort to get more water on them. There's one other plum tree over here that's kind of back here in my dry zone. This one right here. And it's looking okay. It's a small plum tree. It's doing all right, but I suspect when it begins to start fruiting, which is probably going to be next year, That's especially when they need moisture during flowering and fruit development. This one may be a little too far back. I should have put it a little bit closer in the wetter zone. So I think that sums it up. Just some mistakes there. And then as I go forward, if I decide to get more moringas, I'll plant them back here in this drier area. And I'm gonna transplant these berries. And then if I decide I wanna get more berries, let's talk about the blueberries. That's the other one too. So I did know that blueberries needed pretty rich soil, and rich soil usually is equivalent to moist soil. So blueberries need more moisture than most plants that I'm working with here. So here's a blueberry right here. It's looking okay. It's not the most explosive vegetative growth I've ever seen. It could be doing better on that. This one's actually in a spot that I can get the hose to. Like I've got raised beds, like for this eggplant and banana pepper here. So I water that, so I'll go ahead and water the blueberry a little bit while I'm at it. And then these blueberries are in a wet spot. I'm able to get water right here a lot because it's right up against the back of the house. And sure enough, there's some pretty good looking vegetative growth starting to take off with these guys, and that's good. But I do have a group of blueberries back over this way. Now, I thought this spot right here was going to be wetter than it turned out to be. That's why I put my elderberries over here. They probably need more water than anything else I'm trying to grow, is elderberries. But this area ended up being drier than I thought. And probably the drought that we've had. We're still in the midst of a drought that's almost historic. And that's part of it. There's the elderberries there. It's not looking awful. It's just that elderberries should grow better. Now, that's one thing about this El Nino that we have coming up. These elderberries should really benefit a lot from the El Nino. If we get the additional rainfall that they expect and more cloud cover, next spring when these spring up out of the ground, there should be some explosive growth with these elderberries. But these blueberries here, I'm hoping the same thing happens with them because they're also pretty dry over here. And if I were to plant any more blueberries at this point, I would be focusing all of them back over there right up against the back of the house, pretty close. In fact, I think at this point I could say, since our growing season isn't long enough really to produce bananas, I probably would be happier with blueberries there where the bananas are. But I did plant the bananas there partly because I wanted some shade on the back of the house, and they definitely provide that, and blueberries can't do that, they're too short. And by the way, you can definitely tell the difference where it's wetter. My Mexican sunflowers, like this one and this little forest of Mexican sunflowers right over here, they really grow explosively out here because they get a little more water. And as you go back to the drier areas, they're not quite drier and shadier. They're growing fine, but they're nowhere near as lush as they are back that way. Here's one back here in one of the drier spots in the whole garden, and it's okay. It's growing. It's about 11, probably 10, 11 feet tall at least, and it is growing. And I never water it, so it's a pretty good plant for our conditions. But anyway, you can see how they respond when they get more water. So there's just a little summary of what I'm kind of regretting now and what I'm going to do a little differently, what I'm going to change. But if we get any more new blueberries, they would be going in spots like this right here. This is a nice wet spot right off the back of the house. Eventually it'll get shaded out completely by this Fuyu persimmon. I'm not worried about the shade from this Mexican sunflower because that's all my Mexican sunflower plants are temporary plants. Eventually I'm going to be phasing all of them out. I may even be phasing out the Fakahatchee grass eventually too. And I'm probably going to be doing a major pruning on all my Fakahatchees, pruning them all the way down, back down to the ground over the winter and using that as mulch material, chop and drop mulch material. But here's another spot that could grow a blueberry for a while until it gets too shady, you know, from my Saijo persimmon right here. Eventually even the wax myrtle back in there, it's going to get big, and that'll be providing the shade that I wanted on the back of the house. So I'll be phasing out probably these bananas even as well. And they keep coming back from the roots forever, so you just have to keep chopping them at ground level, and every time they try to sprout back up, just keep chopping it off and be patient. It might take 2 years, but eventually the bananas will give it up. Okay, a little summary of some mistakes. You got to really think about what plants need in terms of moisture. Overall, I would say this garden is a dry garden, and maybe I feel that way for 2 reasons. One being that we've been in this historic drought, and the other reason being it's a young food forest. As this food forest matures and we have more and more shade, more and more growth, and you know, everything that we've talked about on this channel, the mycorrhizal network and all the organic matter, both living and dead, below the surface of the ground, as all that happens, basically what we're talking about is forest succession, right? So as this young food forest matures and gets older, the entire thing, all the way even back in this dry area, but all of it is going to be a moister, wetter garden than it is now. But I would say overall right now, my feeling about the garden is it's pretty dry. I don't want to be a slave to the hose. You know, I don't want to be out here watering stuff constantly. So I'm feeling that it's dry. Some of my plants would have done better had I put more water on them, or if we'd have gotten more rainfall. So in dry conditions, you really have to consider, you know, blueberries are not going to do well. Blackberries, not so much either. If it's really wet over the winter, all the time, real soggy wet over the winter, Moringa is probably going to die. So you got to think about all that. And that's it. Just a little update from the garden. I hope y'all got something out of it. And other than that, happy gardening, everybody.